Alright, I want to do an actual drawing video today. Wait. I promise I'll do a bad webcomic next time, I swear. Whew. So I started out as a drawing channel and still want to do one every now and again, and today is a throwback for the OG subscribers. I will be attempting pixel art. Yes, pixel art. Because high definition is so 2000 and late. Or, chuggy, as the media tells me the Zoomers say. No one actually says that, come on. Anyway, everyone loves the retro aesthetic, so let's just dive right in. So, before I start telling you about this piece, I just want to give a shout out to FrostDrive-X, who did a tutorial on how to do pixel art in Clip Studio Paint, my preferred drawing program, but I'm pretty sure what he broke down is applicable to other programs. I'll link that video in the pinned comment if you want someone with more experience to break down pixel art creation for you. This is honestly just my first legitimate swing at it, so I decided to draw a sexy witch. Why? I don't know, just was feeling sexy witches today. I created the file at a low resolution in terms of pixels, so FrostDrive-X recommended using the 1080p resolution and just crossing off the last number. So instead of 1080 by 1920, it's 108 by 192, making it low res. Also, the comments noted that you would want to turn off anti-aliasing on your brush to avoid the blurry edges and give yourself sharp edges. He created the piece at 450 DPI resolution, so I don't know, I did the same, which is above print resolution, but whatever. Even though it's a smaller grid of pixels, it's weird, but it worked out in the end. So I went with a simple bust for this one. Tried to do a bit of foreshortening as well to see how well drawing regularly would translate to pixels. This was just to try it out. I just wanted to make something, you know. I didn't really look into any theory for pixel art at this point. I just tried to draw regularly. And I think it was an okay first attempt. Not the worst, but not the greatest either. The colors and lighting were a little bit tricky due to being extremely limited by the resolution. There's a little bit of inconsistencies in the shadow shapes, and the light is pretty harsh to the point of making it look a bit jarring. Like she's standing directly in the sun. There's like no gradation in the colors, and honestly, I think the flame just straight up looks like shit. But hey, it's my first time, okay? One thing that I found the hardest was facial details. Considering the roundness of the majority of facial features, you know, eyes, lips, nose, it was hard to emulate them in a blockier form. Typically in my style, I like to define the lips a bit more on female characters, but due to the pixel style, I simplified it more down to a single line. I also feel like the wardrobe wasn't really thought out that much. You know, it's just a robe and a witch hat. Wow, haven't seen that a million times. So for the next one, there will probably be a little bit more thought put into that, but as it stands, for the first pixel art piece that I actually gave a legitimate shot at, I think it turned out okay. Let me know what you think for my first piece. Okay, so on to piece number 2 for this video, and I decided to pull the camera out way more so I could draw a more detailed figure and simplify the process further. Since the more you pull away from an image, the less detail should be visible. It's called atmospheric perspective. That's why if you ever read a comic or watch an animation, background characters are way less detailed than the characters the metaphorical camera is focusing on. You know, that's why you see characters in the background with without eyes and stuff. It's a little bit jarring when you look up close, but you know, when you're just watching regularly, it's fine. It works. So I wanted to start this one off with a palette. Since these are pixel pieces, it's best to approach with a limited palette as to not muddy up the image. Not to mention that pixel artists for video games back in the day were limited to the amount of colors that the consoles could display at one time. So it's tradition, but it helps with aesthetics. So it took me a little bit to find a pose I liked, but I landed on this one where you could see her from behind because, well, you know. Man's just gotta draw some ass sometimes. Anyway, feeding the goons aside, I drew normally at first again to get a feel for the anatomy. Very gestural, very loose, and did iterative sketches until I was satisfied. The process was a little bit cumbersome, more so than normal, due to shrinking down the figure and creating this blurriness I don't get when I'm working at a higher resolution. Oh, I forgot to mention, if you want to do pixel art yourself, you should set the brush to 1 pixel, at least for the line work aspect, right? It is pixel art, so work 1 pixel at a time, right? But I persevered and even added a background, and I wanted to do like a magic circle to increase the witchy vibes, and I think it was just alright in the end. So when I finished the line work in a more thought out outfit, I moved on to color, which I did on a separate layer so I could fill it in with the bigger brush faster. I have 3 color layers when I do color, 1 for flat colors, 1 for highlights, and 1 for shadows. When the flats are done, I don't touch them. I added the highlights first, and I should also mention, when I do a more rendered piece, I actually start with a black and white grayscale and sort of do the light and shadow and just grays. But I will talk about that at another time when I do a more regular piece in another drawing video at some point in the future, whenever I do another one of these. Anyway, I added the highlights first and used the Rembrandt lighting scheme that is extremely popular and used by like literally everyone. Light from the top left. Anyway, I used my trusty palette that I'll be using in the next piece to create the highlights, and when I was done placing them, I lowered the opacity and set the layer mode to overlay. I know old school pixel artists didn't have this option, but I do, so why not use it? Then I moved on to the shadows. Anyway, I filled them in, lowered the layer's opacity, and set the layer mode to multiply, which makes them darker or something. I don't know, maybe some nerd can explain the technicality behind the multiply mode. But in short, they just make the shadows look better, in my opinion. And then I went through the process of dithering. Now, dithering is when you create space between pixels to create a more subtle gradation in the lights and shadows. Everyone points to the waterfall in Sonic the Hedgehog as an example. There's actually no transparency there, it just looks transparent because of the space between pixels, and it really brought the piece home. I drew up a rough background, some yellowish clouds to keep the limited palette, and a pentacle for the magic circle. Yes, that's called a pentacle, not a pentagram. They're actually very different. One's pagan, one's satanic. I think. I don't know. I don't really believe in supernatural stuff. I just wanted to draw some sexy witches, because I love sexy witches. I think overall that this one turned out pretty damn good. I do, however, want to push this one step further and see if I can really get a nice piece, and I'm sure in like a year or two I'll look back at this and hate every single piece I made in this video. So, like, let's say I'm targeting that look of like 90s visual novels on the PC. That's where the pixel art is really painstakingly rendered, and if you squint your eyes, it'll look like a well-done painting. That's what I'm going for here. Alright, so to spoil this one a little bit, I didn't quite hit my goal of emulating that 90s visual novel style I was talking about, but I do think it's better than the previous two. I'm writing this in the future where piece number 4 has been completed, which I'll get to next because that's how numbers work, but I can really see my progress. I think it's important to try different mediums as an artist to see how things progress, and this was no different. It also makes you think about things in different ways and try new approaches, such as my limited palette. Anyway, as for this piece itself, keeping with the sexy witch idea, I decided to put her in a goth fashion, because everyone knows that goth girls practice witchcraft. Obviously. But I did struggle with the fishnet top in this medium. I initially drew it with black pixels, but that looked really bad, so I changed it to gray pixels. I think it turned out okay, but I think if I ever draw fishnets in pixel art form again, I'll try to do some kind of transparency. I mean, with goth fashion, come on, you gotta have those fishnets. So I also wanted to go for a more complex pose, so I made it look like she was pulling something from a summoning circle or something like that, which made me approach foreshortening again, which was a bit difficult given the limited amount of blocks I could put on the screen. I also wanted to make the circle look a bit more witchy, I guess, but I didn't really think a design through for it, so it ended up looking kind of askew, for lack of a better word. That better word being shitty. There was an attempt at creating a wooden texture on the ground, but it ends up looking like Baby's first DeviantArt MS Paint drawing, so yeah, I'm really dissatisfied with that. I do think the hair and face turned out pretty good and legible, and the outfit as well, but the hands did end up looking pretty jank, but I end up drawing janky hands all the time, pixel art or not, because admittedly, I am not that good of an artist. I wanted to increase the spookiness too, so I made the background red and added these bloody clouds. Makes it pop against the green, and while I realized that the green and red create a Christmas-like color palette, I think the final image does its best to distance itself from that. I think this one turned out okay. Should mention I also added rays of light coming from the orb in the staff and her hand touching the circle. That's from adding an additional layer in overlay mode and just running the brighter color over the image. Something I did do in the following piece. I think it looks okay here. So, yeah, this one turned out okay, but I should tell you about exporting pixel art. So, I explained that I actually worked at a low resolution to show the pixels, but when you export the file, even at the highest quality, it will look blurry because it's so low res, right? Now, we all want sharp edge pixels, right? At least I do. So before you export, at least for Clip Studio Paint, I'm sure there's a similar process for other programs. Go to the Edit drop-down menu. Then you're going to want to go to Change Image Resolution. Then increase the size to your desired resolution. Usually I just push it until one of them says 1000 or higher. Make sure you're using PX units. And most importantly, make sure you click Nearest Neighbor under the Interpolation drop-down menu. What does that do? I don't know, something technical. Go ask a tech channel. But for me, a dumb artist, it just makes the image sharper and bigger. Yay. Alright? I don't know the technicality behind it. And then I can export it to look nice, right? So there you go. There's my little tutorial. Now, on to the final piece. So I really like the way this one turned out, actually, and I really like how this shows my progress with the pixel art medium. So, your first thought is probably, why are they in their underwear? What can I say, I'm a bit of a goon sometimes. And everyone knows that Bikini Armor has the best stats. Anyway, me being a bit of a degen aside, I mean, come on, have you seen my comic? I wanted to do 2 characters to push myself, and I had this idea of them posing back to back. The poses are a little bit stiff, admittedly, but honestly, my intent was sexy witches. And I think I landed it. So, right, the approach. It was pretty much the same, but now I had a better idea of what I was doing. I also wanted to push the lighting a bit more, so I forgot to mention, but in the previous piece, I added an additional highlight layer of white to really sharpen the edges, and that looked alright, but I wanted to add a bit more subtlety here. I ended up not putting the highlight layer to overlay because it didn't look that good to me and muted the highlights too much, so I ended up just lowering the opacity on that layer. As for the shadow layer, I did set them to multiply. Again, not sure what that means technically, but it just makes the shadows look good to me. I don't know, I'm more art-brained than tech-brained. Unfortunately, I may also be brain-rotted as well, but you know, that's just modernity. Anyway, for the concept, I wanted to give the witches a bit of a different vibe each, so I flipped the color of their hair and their staff orbs because it would create contrast. Especially since I intended on creating a red background, I had to tweak some things. Actually, in the end, I ended up putting a layer of red in the background and lowering the opacity, turning the paper color to black to mute it a bit more and make the characters pop. I think this was a good decision in the end. I also wanted to bring back the magic circle element I've been trying to do, but I did go back to a more simplistic pentacle design. I mean, it's a classic. Come on. One thing I did differently was to do that same thing with the glowing orbs I did last time, but I tried to make the light create subsurface scattering on the witch's hat and hair. Obviously, kind of difficult to emulate that very subtle detail with such a low resolution, but I tried to push my pixel art journey to the next level. Some of the anatomy ended up looking a little jank, hands and feet especially because, well, hands and feet are hard in every medium. Well, for me anyway, especially feet. I told you guys I'm not that good. But I did have a ton of fun with the pixel art style after I got the hang of it, and it's definitely something I'm going to revisit in the future. I do think this last one is my favorite piece I made in the style. Maybe I'll make a special variant of this image for Patreon subscribers, which, by the way, thank you Patreon subscribers, you're the goats. On screen, right now. Real MVPs. That's why you got the whole video a day early. Thank you. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me for today. I do want to squeeze some of these actual drawing videos in here and there for the people that subscribe for that, but I know most people want to see bad webcomics and art icebergs, so those will take priority, and let me tell you that the next comic I'm going to review is actually killing me. It's so bad and so long, but I get the feeling that one might actually hit 100k views or so when it's done, or who knows, maybe this one will hit that first. Who cares? I'm just enjoying making videos. That's all that matters, right? Anyway. Enough rambling. Thank you all for watching. Which one of these pieces was your favorite? Did you hate them all? Why? John, pixel art, sexy witches, forever.